Hey guys, a late season update for you. Just a quick lay of the land. We'll walk down, take a closer look. So over here behind this willow tree is my pond. This year I planted a mix of buckwheat and barley around the edge of the pond. We'll go take a closer look. Here's kind of a distant shot of the food plot, which I started flooding within the last week, and it's about 3/4 full. Let's go take a look. All right, so here's a close-up. We're down by the willow tree. You can kind of see the edge of the pond. Here's a close-up of the barley and buckwheat mix. All the white stuff, the stuff with the white flour, that's the buckwheat. It's coming real well. What's a little bit tougher to see is my barley. That's all this stuff here. That's mixed in amongst the buckwheat. And this stuff's coming real well. I actually think I may plant this in the food plot next year. The nice thing about it is it only gets call it 2 feet tall on average. And that works out well for flooding if you want water to be very visible from above, which I'll show you a little bit more what I mean in a moment. Alright, so I mentioned we started pumping water into the impoundment in recent days. Here's the water control structure. We have the stop logs, which I'll close that one eventually. But I just kind of wanted to give you the official shot. We're going to call it a little over 14 inches of water in the deep side of the impoundment. But when I climb out, so I mentioned there's 14 inches of water. You can see that's about the only real evident spot, at least from where we're standing, that there's water in the impoundment. Let's take a walk out there. All right, so I'm standing on a corner of the impoundment. I really never shoot any video from here, but this is a spot where the water is showing the most. It's the most clear. Now, I mentioned next year I might plant that that buckwheat and barley mix out here because it stays shorter. My impoundment, which is about 1/3 of an acre, the maximum depth I can get on this thing, my water control structure, is 24 inches tall. So I planted this, last year I did all basically Japanese millet is what came in here. This year I did a mix from River Refuge Seed Company out of Oregon, and one of the primary ingredients is this American sloth grass, and that's this stuff here. It looks similar to millet. You can see all the seed heads, but I had a bumper crop of Japanese millet last year. This year I have a bumper crop of this American sloth grass. The official mix was, I think, 60% millet, 30%, I think it was 60% millet, 20% of the sloth grass, and 20% of the smartweed. But the sloth grass is what has really come in unbelievably this year. I do have some stands of millet. Here's kind of a lonely stand of millet. And down by the water control structure, the tall stuff there, that's all millet. I think that's all Japanese millet reseed from last year. I wasn't able to till that, so that came in pretty thick. But basically the bigger lesson I want to point out is this stuff gets pretty tall. This American sloth grass and the Japanese millet will easily get 6 feet tall if there's good nutrients in the soil. And the trouble with that is if you don't build a specific landing zone in your food plot, obviously from the sky it's harder to tell that there's water in your impoundment. And I've read different rules of thumbs on this. Some people say you want roughly 1/3 of your floodable impoundment or food plot to be open for the birds to sit in. I'm sure that's pretty subjective, but again, I have a pretty good crop. This thing turned out pretty good this year, but the downside is this stuff is really tall on the end, and unless I'm able to get this thing fully flooded, it's going to be tougher for the birds to see this thing. All right, I'm back down by the water control structure. again, just a quick recap to finish up here. Here's the lay of the land. My pond is separated from my water control structure with this berm, which I'm standing on. Or excuse me, my pond is separated from my impoundment by this berm. Here's the impoundment, which I'm flooding out. This is again a mix of this American slough grass, which is largely what you can see, with the exception of the stuff, this really thick, taller stuff with the seed pods, that's millet. And I believe the one other ingredient that you can't see in the impoundment right now, I believe this is the smartweed. And we'll see if any of that fills in at all. So I've just been pumping water with a trash pump from my pond. You can kind of see out there how far I've drawn this thing down, at least 6 or 8 inches, and all that water's ended up in my impoundment. So we're a good month ahead of duck hunting. I just wanted to get this done, get some water on this thing to see if we can't get some birds in here ahead of time before the season starts. So that's the mid-season update. Thanks for watching.